Have you ever wondered, why am I here? What am I supposed to do with my life? And how can I actually do it? Then we've got great news. A simple, powerful secret that will revolutionize your life. Few discover it, yet it is within reach of all of us. Few perform at their maximum potential, but you can join those who do. Now, to help you discover the missing link to your success, Dr. Robb Thompson, one of America's leading relational strategists, has prepared a treasure chest of highly useful, practical tools that will help you know who you are and how to fulfill your unique calling in life. The door to your destiny is waiting to be thrust open, and through this fundamental, indispensable teaching, you'll discover the amazing yet little-known keys that you must have to unlock the gateway to the future you've always desired. Join Dr. Robb Thompson as he brings you the 10 critical laws of relationship.
Today we're going to talk about something that is absolutely wonderful. It's something that really you know about, but yet many times people don't really talk about. It's the subject of transparency. You see, in life, is there anything that you hide from people? I don't hide anything from anyone. As a matter of fact, my life is an open book. In fact, if anything can be said about me, there are times when I'm way too transparent. Quite honestly, I can be transparent because I have nothing to hide. Really, you have to choose who you're going to impress. And I don't want to impress anyone except for God. I live for the audience of heaven, not for the audience of men. And if you can't hide anything from Him, why would I ever attempt to hide it from anyone else? I desire more and more every day to be free from the opinions of others. People are going to believe whatever they want to believe anyway about you. Why in the world would you ever try to impress them? I must make sure in my quest, in my pursuit of transparency, I must make sure of this one thing, that I'm open and I'm honest before God. Then and only then can He honor and exalt me to a higher responsibility in this life. You must always remember that it is heaven that you want to impress. It's not this earth that you're even looking to impress. So you must be open, you must be honest, and you must be what we'll call today transparent. And I'm going to give you some new understandings about that word. But let me ask you this. What are you hiding from others? Are you the same in front of people as when you are all alone? Are you the same at 3 o'clock in the morning as you are at 3 o'clock in the afternoon? Is there anything that you try to avoid when God pricks your heart about something? You see, I know that feeling of being pricked in my spirit. I've been there before in my own life. I've tried to conceal certain matters from God. I've even tried to conceal certain matters from myself because I just didn't know how God or others were going to respond. Then I learned that nothing is hidden from God. God knows everything. It's not a surprise to Him when it comes up with you. In fact, He welcomes our transparency. We find that throughout the Scriptures, really more than anyone else, that David was more transparent with God than anyone that we can really see. He was a person who was so open about what was going on in his heart that it's very difficult even to read some of his memoirs because he told God everything. Transparency is somewhat of a buzzword these days. It's so interesting, like the word vision, or like the word destiny. It's a buzzword among people. It even made the word of the year recently, very interestingly. The Encarta Word English Dictionary gives two applicable meanings. One is to be clearly recognizable for what he or she is. And secondly, to be completely open and frank about things. A new and improved meaning of the word in the year 2003, it just means a full disclosure. The transparency means nothing more than fully disclosing things. Interestingly enough, just recently I've come to a new understanding. I used to think that transparency meant that I was able to see through something, that a person, when you looked through them, you thought that that person had no guile. But now we find that people are so technical. They're almost computerish in the way that they work inside of their minds. You see, a computer doesn't understand when what you do is you hit a particular command, or if you go online and you're looking for the meaning of a particular word, if you're not exact about the spelling of something, then you'll never even think that that is a word at all. And truly the same thing it also comes true with people, is that the word transparency isn't that what I do is I tell a person what they ask me like a computer does. But what I do in full disclosure is I tell them what they need to know that they're really looking for, that they may not have hit a bullseye in their questions as of yet. So let's talk about the law of transparency in relationships, because transparency in relationships is something that is very important. I want to know everything when I need to know it. It's not that I want to go searching for things anymore and I'm trying to find something out. And I go through a relationship with someone for 10 or 15 years before I ever discover really what's going on with that person. But what is the law of transparency? It's complete disclosure on a subject. It's opening myself up. So here is this principle. Complete disclosure is an indispensable characteristic of all meaningful relationships. And you need to know that. Number one is that transparency begins by being honest with oneself. You know, you don't lie to anyone else more in life than you lie to yourself. The biggest liar on the block is the liar who lies to himself. All of us tell ourselves things that may not necessarily be the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Yes, we're kind of aware of what's going on, but we seemingly always have a reason for the reason why things are the way that they are. But there are three causes for self-deception. Now you need to know that in the scriptures, you need to be able to know the word and not do it to be deceived. But here are causes that go beyond that. One of the causes for self-deception is an overinflated opinion about yourself. That you believe really that you have more value in relationships, at the workplace, you know, in your marriage, that you have more of a value about yourself than is really true. It's an overinflated opinion about yourself. Then B, another cause for self-deception is an underinflated opinion about yourself. Is it in what we'll just call more commonly as low self-esteem. A person that has low self-esteem, they don't see themselves high enough, they don't see themselves at the level enough to really see things the way that they need to be seen. And this is a cause for self-deception. And then C, another cause for self-deception is ignorance. Ignorance. Through the prophet Hosea, God said this in chapter 4, verse number 6. He said, "My people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge." My people. Not the devil's people, not the people down the street. He said, "My people are destroyed because they don't know." You see, transparency is something that's very, very important to you. Let's go on. Here's number 2. That I can never change what I'm unwilling to face. If I'm not willing to confront something, I can't change it. And you need to understand that you need to change within before you can ever change without. You have to change inside before you can ever change outside. This transparency that we're discussing has to do somewhat like a teenage person. We'll use them as an example because many of us have teenagers at home. Teenagers are people that they really don't lie. It's just that they don't disclose. They really don't lie. It's just that they didn't tell you all of the truth. They really don't lie. It's just that they're not letting you know really what you need to know. And the only way that you can ever deal with an individual like this is that you must understand that that change needs to happen inside them. When they're younger, you can change their behavior outside. But when they get into their teens, you can't change their countenance. You need to change a person's countenance, and they are the ones that have to discover how to do that. Therefore, you must change within before you can ever change without. You have to change your heart before you can ever change your actions. Now, here are 5 canons of transparency. Now, why do I say canons? Because those are the foundations. Those are the pillars. Those are the cornerstones of transparency. that if I'm going to be transparent, if I'm going to open myself up, if I'm going to be an open book in everything that I do, I need to know these 5 things. Number 1 is I need to know how to be straightforward. I have to be straightforward about things. Now, I don't need to be offensive. I don't need to be mean. I don't need to push my opinions upon others. But what I do need to do is I need to be straightforward. In Galatians chapter 2, verse number 11, the Apostle Paul writes these words about himself and the Apostle Peter, and he says this. He said, "Now when Peter had come to Antioch, I withstood him to his face, because he was to be blamed, or he was to be wronged. For before certain men came from James, he would eat with the Gentiles. But when they came, he withdrew and separated himself, fearing those who were of the circumcision. He was afraid that the Jews would judge him. And so what he would do is he would pull himself away from the people that he called his friends when it was time for the Jews to come near. And then when they were gone, he would go back to his friends." In verse 13 it says, "And the rest of the Jews also played the hypocrite with him." They had their Gentile friends, but then when the Jews came, all of a sudden they wanted to be Jewish again. So they played the hypocrite with him, so that even Barnabas was carried away with their hypocrisy. Interestingly enough, there's only one other time you even hear the name Barnabas after the book of Acts, chapter 15, when he and the Apostle Paul had a falling out. And this right here shows what happens to a person who breaks relationship, is that Barnabas was carried away with the hypocrisy. He himself became a hypocrite when he knew better. Why? Because the company that you allow into your life will determine the belief system that you hold. And in verse 14, he tells us this. He said, "But when I saw that they were not straightforward about the truth of the gospel, he said, I said to Peter before them all, if you, being a Jew, live in the manner of Gentiles and not as the Jews, why do you compel Gentiles to live as Jews?" You see, he was straightforward with him. He said, "Hey, Peter, let me ask you about this." And he said he did it in front of people. Now, why are there times when we need to do things in front of people? And this is very important. Please grasp this. Don't try to hide or go in the back room when a person does something wrong. Because if they did it in front of people, they need to be confronted in front of people. You don't need to pull them aside. Now, if something happens in the workplace, yes, that's really true. But when there is misbehaving in public, you correct in public. And so here he said, why do you compel the Gentiles to live as Jews if in fact you Jews become like Gentiles when the Jews aren't around? Here's the definition in the Greek of the word hypocrisy there. It gives us the picture of someone who speaks from behind a mask. Peter was speaking from behind this mask, and then he kind of tried to take the mask off when the Jews came around. Now, the second canon, second cornerstone, the second foundation of transparency is intimacy. Intimacy is interesting because we must never allow the invitation to intimacy to ever be clouded by and polluted by either immorality or by hypocrisy or by contempt. In the book of Samuel, chapter 18, verse number 1, it said, "Now when he had finished speaking to Saul, the soul of Jonathan," in 1 Samuel, "was knit to the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul." Intimacy. Verse 2, "Saul took him that day and wouldn't let him go home to his father's house anymore." Verse 3, "Then Jonathan and David made a covenant because he loved him as his own soul. And Jonathan took off the robe that was on him and gave it to David, with his armor, even to his sword, and his bow and his belt." Now in 2 Samuel, after Jonathan had been killed and Saul in battle, in verse 26, chapter 1, verse 26, he said, "I'm distressed for you, my brother Jonathan. You have been very pleasant to me. Your love to me was wonderful, surpassing the love of women." Whether you realize this or not, God desires for you to have an intimate relationship with those of the same sex, whether they be male or female. And people have a problem with this. I didn't say a sexual relationship. I said an intimate relationship. Because there are things that happen between a man and a man that a woman cannot know. It doesn't fit into her mind. It doesn't fit into her psyche. There are things that happen between a woman and a woman. They call it girlfriends. There are things that happen between a woman and a woman that are not sexual, that a man can't know because of the way that he'll respond. And Jonathan and David had a very pleasant relationship. He said, "You've been very pleasant to me. Your love to me was wonderful. No one could ever do for me what you have done." Surpassing the love of women. The canon of transparency. The third one is this. The third foundation stone is vulnerability. If I'll be transparent, that means that I'll be so open, I'll be so laid bare in my closest relationships that it's easy for you to hurt me. You see, unless we tear down the walls of self-protection, we'll never experience the sublime joy of being protected. I remember a few years ago when I was supposed to make a trip to a very important meeting in Hong Kong. My adopted father, Peter Daniels, and I were on the telephone. I had just been in Hong Kong twice before, just 2 weeks before that. I was home a week, I was in Hong Kong a week, I was home a week, I was in Hong Kong a week, and when I came home after the second trip, my mind turned upside down. Everything that I had been delivered from, all the fears, all the shame, all the guilt, all the blame, attempted to come back to me. I was so tired. When you're so tired and you can't sleep, and you're sitting there and it's miserable. The jet lag was so miserable. The differences in time zones were more than I could bear. And I called my father. After I called some very high-powered Christian leaders and had them pray with me, because I needed to go to Hong Kong for this business meeting. I needed to go. And on the other end of the phone, my father said to me, he said, "You're not going." I said, "Dad, I gotta go. I've got to go. I need to be there with you in this meeting. I need this introduction to be there for me, of you." He said, "Son, you're not going." I said, "Father, I gave my word." He said, "No, you didn't." He said, honestly, he said, "You know that if I gave my word and I physically could not do it, I would not." He said, "I can go. Even if you want me to stay home, I can still go because I gave my word and there's nothing wrong with me. I must keep my word, but you are not going." And for the first time in my life, very openly, and I've never even said this before, but very openly was one of the only times in my life, because I can't remember another, where someone really loved me. They cared for me. They protected me. Because usually in my life, I'm protecting people. What I'm doing is I'm fixing their problems. I'm taking care of their families. I'm making sure that I can put people together all over the world every day, day in and day out. And I really kind of go neglected most of the time. But I was vulnerable. I opened myself up and I said, "I will not go." Because for the first time that I could remember in my life, I was loved. You need to understand this. You need to be vulnerable. Vulnerability isn't bad. Vulnerability is good. It's beautiful. As a matter of fact, it's one of the things that will cause you to feel clean. Being vulnerable. Not cynical. Not brutal. Not to where what you're doing is you're always protected and you always have these walls up and you never let anyone in. In the book of Matthew chapter 5, beginning with verse number 41, the Bible tells us, "And whoever compels you to go 1 mile, he said, go with him 2. Give to him who asks you, and from him who wants to borrow from you, don't turn away. You've heard that it was said," that's what the scriptures have written, "you shall love your your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies. Bless those who curse you. Do good to those who do good action. Do good to those who hate you. And pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you. You must understand how important that is. It's important for you to be vulnerable, but not stupid. You're still wise as a serpent and harmless as a dove. Be vulnerable. And then our next canon of transparency is truth and honesty. Truth and honesty. This foundation stone, this pillar that is underneath your life that no one can rarely see is that you never present yourself externally what you are not internally. The Hebrew word for truth is emeth, E-M-E-T-H, which means to be stable, certain, right, and sure. Also it means to build up, support, and to foster. Truth is to foster, build up, support, to be certain, to be right, to be sure, and to be stable. Now, honesty is behavior and action and words that aim to convey the truth. That's honesty. Words that aim to convey truth. That's honesty. In Ephesians chapter 4, verse number 25, it says, so put away all falsehood and tell your neighbor the truth, because we belong to one another. You see, we need to tell one another the truth. You see, Hebrews chapter 27, or Proverbs chapter 27, verse number 5 says this. Open rebuke is better than love carefully concealed. You need to tell the truth. It's how you tell it that matters. Some people it takes 30 minutes to tell 20 seconds of truth to. But you need to make sure that they get the truth. In Ephesians chapter 4, verse number 15, it says, but speaking the truth, how? In love. You may grow up into all things, into Him who is the head, even Christ. You need to know this, because this is so true. We fool ourselves and call it walking in love, not realizing that we're consenting to another's death. Do you realize that when you say that you're walking in love with someone, you are actually, by your actions, deceiving someone who doesn't know what you know? In Psalm chapter 51, verse number 6, after David had repented of his time with Bathsheba, he said this, behold, he said, you desire truth in the inner parts. He said, in the hidden part, you will make me to know wisdom. Purge me with hyssop, and I shall be clean. Wash me, and I shall be whiter than snow. Make me hear joy and gladness, that the bones you have broken may rejoice. Hide your face from my sins, and blot out all my iniquities, my Father. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. Cast me not away from your presence, O Lord, and don't take your Holy Spirit from me. Restore to me the joy of your salvation. You see how important this is. Now, in the canon of transparency, the fifth pillar is this: absolute integrity. Do you know the word absolute is very interesting, because absolute zero is the absence of all heat. Even at 0 Fahrenheit, there's still heat in the air. But absolute zero is the absence. You see, darkness isn't really dark until you go to a place where there is no stars, where there is no lights, where there is nothing that can shed anything. It's where when you look in front of your face, you cannot see. The air is so thick, it is so dark, it is so black. You see, that's absolute dark. And in absolute integrity, you need to understand that absolute integrity means that you have integrity through and through, all the way, in every situation. You see, integrity is displayed when what you say and what you do are exactly the same. In the book of Genesis chapter 39, beginning with verse number 6, it tells us the story concerning Joseph. It says, thus he left, in speaking concerning Potiphar, he said, thus he left all that he had in Joseph's hands. And he didn't know what he had except for the bread which he ate. Now Joseph was handsome in form and in appearance. And it came to pass after these things that his master's wife, Potiphar, cast longing eyes upon Joseph, and she said to him, come and lie with me. But he refused and said to his master's wife, look, my master doesn't know what he's with me in this house, and he has committed all that he has into my hands. Verse 9, there is no one greater in this house than I, nor has he kept back anything from me but you, because you are his wife. And now notice what Joseph says. How can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? Joseph's relationship with God meant more than his relationship of pleasure with his flesh. After years of having no woman, having no wife, having nothing and being alone, he gets offered the wife of his captor, of his owner, of his master. And he says, how can I do this wickedness and sin against God? So it was as she spoke to Joseph day by day that he did not heed her to lie with her or to be with her. But it happened about this time that Joseph went into the house to do his work, and none of the men of the house were inside, that she caught him by the garment, saying, lie with me. But he left his garment in her hand and fled and ran outside. You see, Joseph had integrity. He refused to give in, no matter how much temptation day after day after day after day came at him. In the book of Proverbs, chapter 10, verse number 9, the Bible tells us this: he who walks with integrity walks securely, but he who perverts his ways will become known. Proverbs chapter 11, verse number 3 tells us that the integrity of the upright will guide them. You see, your integrity will guide you. It will bring you to a place where you need to be. You never know, friends, you never know a person until they have no more guide, or they have no more judgment, or they have no more person that can put a lid on their life. You don't know them until those days are over. And the integrity of the upright will guide them, regardless of whether their parents, their boss, their spouse, anyone else is watching. Their integrity will be the thing that guides them. Now you need to understand this: the transparency fear-proofs a relationship. It actually causes fear to leave. When you're transparent, when you're open, when you're vulnerable, when you're a person that is so wide open, you get rid of the fear in any relationship. You see, full disclosure demonstrates your utter trust in another's ability to love you and to protect you. Indeed, relational transparency cultivates intimacy and favor. It's that what it does is that it will cultivate more intimacy. The more you don't have fear, the more transparent you are. The people that are transparent in my life are people that I love deeply. It's when people begin to hide. It's when they begin to justify themselves. It's when they begin to stand up for themselves and try to protect themselves. That if you're going to protect yourself, you are protecting yourself for a reason. And that reason that you're protecting yourself is what I'm after. But if a person is transparent with me, then they will get absolutely nothing but kindness from me. Because a person that is transparent and a person that is vulnerable is an individual that can easily be taken advantage of. And when you are a just person, you will never take advantage of someone that is vulnerable. You have to know that. You see, so this transparency, this relational transparency, what it will do is it will cultivate intimacy and favor. Now, this gift of intimacy is the highest form of confidence and respect that one can show another. It's very holy. It's blessed. It's a holy gift. And it's something that we've entrusted to someone else. This is so important, transparency. My desire is that you've learned something today. Take what I have said. Spend time with it, because transparency will be one of the greatest things that you ever have added to the arsenal of relationship in your life. I'll see you in the next session.
In this session of the 10 Critical Laws of Relationship, Dr. Robb Thompson discussed the law of transparency. Complete disclosure is an indispensable characteristic of all meaningful relationships. Within this law, it is important to understand, number 1, transparency begins by being honest with one's self. Number 2, I can never change what I am unwilling to face. The 5 canons of transparency. Number 1, straightforwardness. Number 2, intimacy. Number 3, vulnerability. Number 4, truth and honesty. And lastly, number 5, absolute integrity. And remember, the single most important factor defining your future is the relationships you embrace.
Wow, I love that teaching. I love it, love it, love it. I loved it when I did it, and I love it today. Every time I listen to one of those lessons, I think, my goodness gracious, how did you ever get so smart? Because, man, it seems as though that I need to relearn those things out of that series over and over and over again, because life finds a way to be able to pull you out of all of that understanding and to put you in a place where you're a doer of the word and you can get the rewards from all of those things which you've done. If you don't have that series, if you don't have that, the 10 critical laws of relationship, if you don't have the whole thing there, I want to encourage you to get it. You just need to get that. You just need to have it. You need to have it for your kids and for your grandkids. You need to have that thing right there, because those of the people that you love are going to face off with these things in every generation. In one way or another, those very things are going to fit. Not one of them actually has to do with this age or genre that we're living in right now. But you know, one of the things that we do is that we're grateful to God. And when we're grateful to God for all of the things that He teaches us, we're also grateful. We're also grateful so much that it causes us to be a giver. Gratitude causes giving to come alive inside of your life. Do you know, the Bible tells us that we give. It's given to us. Now, why would God give back to us? Because unless God gives back to me, I won't have anything to be able to give in the future. And here at FHC, we have 4 different ways that you can give. They're coming across the bottom of your screen right there, and you can see them. And if you're watching by social media this evening, what I want you to do is I want you to just go over into the chat column. And when you go into the chat column, you'll see that there is a link that's right there that you can click. I do it every service. It's absolutely wonderful. And so just go over there to that and click that link, and it'll take you right to a place where you can put right in exactly what it is that you believe God wants you to do. And when you do, please remember to be able to click that little box that's right there that just adds that service charge. It's not something that we get at all, but it's something that we get to pay this wonderful company that gives us this opportunity to be able to give. Thanks for watching this evening. I know that you are greatly enriched and that goodness and mercy is following you all the days of your life. I'll see you next time.